My name is Ron Jones, and welcome to what's the name of the panel? I think it's Simfis Playtesting, or how to play test, or basically, I'm not sure, or we didn't really get much direction from uh, the secrets of playtesting. Okay, that's a little direction. So we have a rather large panel here with a lot of experience, a lot of talents, and whatnot. So I'm super excited to get to know them a little bit more and let them introduce themselves to you a little bit more. I guess I can start. So, Ron Jones, I am an independent game developer. I do QA for Tripwire Interactive up in Roswell, Atlanta. And I also run the Indie Cluster, which is an organization that helps provide opportunities for game developers. We do QA for indies as well as provide spaces for them to kind of appear at different conferences and just create an overall good network, kind of a family environment for them. And I'm going to pass it along to my left.
I'm Joe Cassava. I'm the Joe of Puzzles by Joe, and I've already spoken here today, so I'm going to keep that intro short. And I just do a game called Clutter. That's now the 14th game. Was released about a month ago in the Clutter franchise, and life is good.
I'm Michael Brown. I'm the CEO of Vicarious PR and V Publishing.
All right. Hey, everyone. My name is Forrest. I've been in the video game industry for 10 years. I feel like we're all getting to know each other as well, so it's great to see everybody here. And yeah, I've worked on games like Gigantic, Dreadnought, Rhyme, uh, and now I'm EP/game designer on Realm Royale. So then looking into the future. So love QA, love testing, and so hopefully I can help everybody out and get in the good direction.
Hi, I am Karen Williams with Hiccup Interactive. I actually graduated from Columbus State. Yay, represent, hi, alumni. I made it, I did it. Thanks, Mom. So, I've created a game called Urchins in Ink. It teaches Japanese. I go around and demo that. I've also done board games and appeared at Siege. I'm at a lot of cons. You see me, I can tell you about all the different ways of getting through it all. And being a solo developer, and here you go.
Hello, everyone. I'm Valencia Coleman. I'm also a CSU alumni again. So yay! I am associate gameplay engineer at Alchemy Labs, which makes VR games. I'm also an indie game dev. So I do both. I work at a company and I make games. And fun fact, than that, I'm also the IGA Foundation alumni coordinator. So when people work at the IGDA and the department that does diversity in games, you guys come to me. I'm all about promoting diversity of games, especially people of color in the game industry. So that's my biggest thing. Nice to meet everyone.
Awesome. So, like I mentioned, a lot of experience, a lot of different perspectives. So, I think first question we can start off with: why is giving good feedback crucial to the game developer or to game development? And what is the best kind of feedback?
Well, honest feedback is the best kind of feedback. You don't, which means don't want you to use your friends to test your game. They're, they're gonna they're gonna lie to you. So if they're nice at all, they're gonna probably lie to you. So, um, so yeah, you just want honest feedback. And my only advice is, you want honest feedback from people that enjoy your game. You don't care about the people that don't like your game, because if you try to appeal to them or make changes based on their feedback, you'll water down your game and you'll have a blah game. You actually want games that people hate and love, and you want to listen to the people that love your game, but they're still telling you why parts of it annoys them, and you want to remove, just like my talk, you want to remove the annoyance for them.
Thank you. Yeah, honest feedback's good. I think one of the things it's important to do is to try and get some metrics and analytics involved in the feedback. So, because often a lot of times gamers will tell you one thing verbally, but the data will tell you something completely different. So, some people might say, oh, well, it's really hard, but it might be a vocal minority, and the data actually suggests that more than 60% of people are getting to a certain point. So really being able to quantify any feedback and data that you get gives you a better picture of the whole, rather than just relying on surveys or specific verbal feedback given.
Okay, so for me, I have about 20 outside, inside, internal testers, and those are kind of like my vanguard. So I know I'm going to get beaten up in the comments. I know as soon as a patch goes out, a game releases, the internet's going to absolute roast me. So some of these people that test our game for us are some of the most passionate. They have a wide range, whether they have 100 hours in, 5,000 hours in, or 10,000 hours in. They bring me the stuff first. They say, hey, Thor, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And if I can make not all of them happy, because that never works out, but if I can make the majority of those happy, then that prepares me for the patch and say, hey, you've identified things. You brought all the stuff up, and so it just gets us farther to the finish line. So, yeah, without those, I would be completely lost, so for sure.
I would say the most important thing, very first off, is to figure out what would be good feedback for your game, because not every feedback that you get is necessarily applicable per se. And so as far as like getting general feedback, getting people to play your game is definitely important, but being able to pinpoint what information is something that you can actually do something with, or that is actually something that you can shoot for, that's quantifiable and achievable. Because if someone's like, oh, I wish your game had better graphics, it's voxel art. Like, what do you want? So figuring out what is good feedback for you, and then also being able to pinpoint what someone is getting at. I personally really like watching people play my game, because there's a lot that you can get from facial expressions and things that you see them doing and being frustrated with, that they may not verbalize, that they don't know that they're doing, and that kind of like helps to make it a better experience from what you can see how they're experiencing it.
Everything everyone says completely true, and I gotta twist the question in a way that makes my answer different. So I'm going to do this in a way that is working with a team, because I am a team lead on 2 indie games I'm working on. And feedback is vitally important, but also taking the feedback to the right person. For example, I am the programmer / producer for one of my 2 indie games. I get art feedback. I'm like, what do I do with that? So I need to go to my artist. We need to sit down and chat. I ask, is this feedback useful for you? And how so? Please explain, is it useful? For example, one of my visual novels that I'm working on a team with, you'll be surprised how much work goes into a visual novel. They was talking about their colors were crashing, and I don't know what color theory is. I'm a programmer, and so I went to my artist and be like, so the colors are clashing. What people are saying, is this important to you? Are we getting several people saying that? How do we fix that? And it took a team meeting to discuss that feedback. Like, that's the most important thing, having retros with your team, meeting with other people with the feedback. Because the way we get feedback in those games, we just post on itch.io and see what people say. Because the thing on itch.io, most people aren't there to be haters most of the time. They're really nice people up there, and the other developers play your game. They be like, I understand the walking, here's how you can do to fix it. So that helps a lot with getting feedback, and having team meetings and meeting with other people and be like, okay, I got this feedback, but how do I fix it? Feedback's not very helpful if no one tells you, like, this is the thing that's wrong. Getting very specific feedback is very useful. So, yeah, that's my twist on the answer. Twist on the question.
Yeah, definitely. Just to add on a lot of that, like my favorite feedback, or I guess at least for me, because you can have a conversation with somebody, and what is it, like 10% or like 90% of what we communicate isn't verbal, right? So a lot of things that people are trying to say, or how people actually might feel, it's not really going to be, they might not know how to put it into words, or like, I just saw you fail at this part, don't say that you liked it, or something like that. So like, the wires can get crossed. But so I really like watching people, not watching people like that, let me finish talking. I really enjoy watching people play my game, and to practice not saying anything, to find out where they fall into certain traps, or what's confusing, where where they get lost at, how long does it take them to get unlost. Like a lot of that is really important feedback, I believe, for developers, so they can kind of, because the developer isn't going to be there when the millions of players that you want to play your game. You're not going to be in the chat like, hey, do this. You know what I'm saying? So the game really has to speak for itself in that regard. So I think that's very important. Just a quick, I wanted to read the room for a little bit, or for a quick second. How many people are developing their own game? Okay, good handful. Maybe about half. That's awesome. What about anybody that's actually trying to get a position or a job of QA testing? Anybody? Okay, one and a half. Okay, two. Okay, cool. But I'm assuming everybody here are game enthusiasts. Everybody play games, right? We all like playing games. Okay, awesome. Just a quick. So the next question I think we can ask is some of our favorite bugs, or basically like our interactions with this code or this art that isn't really working as it should. Like what are some experiences to let people know like what could be a bug, or what is a bug, or maybe in the game development process, like what's something that's really kind of stumped you a little bit, or what you had to get over.
Come back to me. I need to think on that.
I don't know. I'm a business marketing guy. Like, I don't know code. I think the biggest story I have of something like that was during an open beta. One of my clients realized that the game was fundamentally broken on a global scale, and then we had to, within 12 hours, pull the game down, retract about 700 emails to press and influencers, revoke almost 1.2 million keys on Steam, and then panic for about 6 days until we figured out if we could fix it or not, which we did, and it rolled out again. But yeah, I mean, a simple problem can go wrong.
Okay, so occasionally I get, and this is an unfixed bug in some ways, and it may or may not get ever fixed, because number one, players don't read. So if you tell them, so forth. So my favorite is so Clutter's a game about usually picking two objects that match. So I've gotten, I think, 3 or 4 emails over the years, and I do have 10,000 people playing the game, okay? So 3 or 4 isn't much, but it's, they found me, and I have less than 2,000 people that have probably found me. But 3 or 4 go, I think there's a bug in level such and such. And you go, and they go, well, what does it do? Or they tell me, and they say, I click on a match, and it won't let me click, and the screen goes dark. I go, okay. And basically I send them back this message. So if you look at the icons before the game starts, you'll see there's a 2 with a not symbol on it. And there's also a 1 in a blue diamond that tells you only need 1 to match. These are called singleton puzzles. And you're looking for things that don't have a match. And because we don't want you to just click willy-nilly, we have to darken the screen when you hit one that does have a match. So you're trying to find, for instance, the 10 objects in this field of 100 that don't have a match. But either the pop-up text or Clutter 1000 at least had no text, so they were supposed to sort of figure this out on their own. Players that don't think there's a bug in the game when the game doesn't have a bug, other than they haven't figured out the icons yet. So, but it's the first time I heard about it, it took me a while to figure out what they were talking about. So, and I still don't know what to do about it, because I have heard from players that actually tell them what a singleton game is, and then they still run into that later on when they probably forgot what a singleton is. No. But I can't get rid of it's a great puzzle, so I'm not going to get rid of that variation.
Okay, I have two examples for two different sides of the group. For the developers, one of the most annoying, hateful bugs I've ever ran into was I had 20 actors for spawning into a location with the bots, and I hit the nav mesh and everything was good, but the bots wouldn't spawn. And I'm like, okay, why aren't the bots spawning? The bots should be there. And I couldn't get the bots to spawn at all. And so I raised all the actors up, so the bots would kind of spawn in the air, then kind of fall down. And then Unreal says, no, do not do this. This is the worst thing you could possibly do. Red air is flying everywhere. And I'm like, okay, obviously I shouldn't do this. So I was stuck. I didn't know what to do. And then my level designer comes over and he says, no, ignore all of what Unreal is saying. Just hit the compile code and it's going to be okay. And I was like, ignore Unreal? Like, this is telling me not to do this. And so just trust your instincts sometimes, developers. Just hit that button and give it a go. And so that was one that I saw it and I was like, why? I had to do the exact opposite of what Unreal is telling me to do. So that was fun. For you though, in the back, wanting to be a QA, if I have snacks or if I have an extra treat or whatever, I always drop my extra treats or whatever to my friends who are in programming and QA. You are so essential to a project. And I can speak a little bit to the part where often QA people will be like, hey, this is broken, designer. You need to fix this or, give feedback to designer, which is great. It's integral to the part. I oftentimes deal with Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo going into CERT. And that's where you give a build over to Nintendo, and they say, this is bad. This is broken. Go do it again. And that's a very stressful time. And there's been so many times where Pazir and other teams QA people would come to me and they say, hey, how can I help? So to the person in the back wanting to get into QA, you are coveted. You are loved. We will always love you because you are just so important to that process. So anybody that tells you otherwise just hasn't been into game design or game industry. So keep your chin up. And I absolutely hate it when people look down on QA. You're important. You're a way to get in the video game industry, and we wouldn't be here without you. So keep shining, QA.
So I would say my big bug shenanigans would be that art can be a bug, and it sometimes can be difficult to discern whether this is a bug that you need to fix or that you need to telegraph in a different way. Urchins and Ink is an underwater game. As much as everyone hates underwater levels, I don't know. I think I wanted to make it more difficult for myself. So in the early aughts, before I got an artist in, I just kind of put in some placeholder art, and I used just sand. Oceans have sand. We're underwater. It's blue. There's sand. Should be not complicated. Apparently, my sand was so ugly that a majority of my feedback whenever I would get people to play test my game is that I don't know, sand's kind of ugly. I was like, well, did you learn anything? Did you like it? Did it crash? Your sand's pretty ugly. So that's when I was like, okay, maybe I should get an artist into this and get rid of my ugly sand that's apparently breaking my game. But those type of things, art can be distracting. It can take away from the experience of the game. As a developer, as a designer, you want to focus on my mechanics are great, my gameplay is amazing, but for real, the art can cause unexpected experiences, and that impacts the success and enjoyability of your game sometimes. Another less obnoxious art issue that I actually accept and don't see as stupid is I have bubbles. My game has bubbles in it, and you're supposed to go and touch the bubbles. However, in a lot of games, you see bubbles, you shoot bubbles. I would get a lot of players that would try to shoot the bubbles instead of touching them, and they'd be confused why the game isn't continuing. So even so far as changing my interactables to changing the appearance, adding sparkles to it, something that makes it want to be touched as opposed to shooting to. Some of those are things that also you wouldn't have noticed unless you saw someone play it and see that they're not interpreting your thing properly. So removing your preconceived notions of just we're underwater, there's sand, whatever, no big deal. Oh, there's bubbles, go touch the bubble. There's a lot of times that your issues can be fixed by adjusting your art and getting someone else to look at it that has an artistic perspective as opposed to a developer one. So yeah.
So my favorite bug of all time was one that no one noticed, and it was great. So I was making an RPG Maker horror game for, if you guys know RPG Maker horror back in the day, woo, I love the, yes, classic. So I was making one and it was getting some good feedback and nothing too terrible. And then my other programmer said, "Hey, Valencia." So I noticed no one's commenting on the chase scene at the end, which is usually a pretty big thing in horror games. I was like, that's an interesting thing. Why is no one commenting on the chase scene at the end? No one at all. So he had his friend play the game, and we had one line of code that was actually skipping over the chase scene. So you'll finish the level and go straight to the credits. How is the player supposed to know there's a whole nother part of the game? They won't comment 'cause they won't notice it. So I was like, oh my God, that was a huge bug, but we didn't get any feedback on it because how is the player supposed to know? So we had to go back and fix it, and it was one line of code that was messing up everything. That's the best bugs in the whole entire world. When he's like, oh my gosh, it's one line. So that was my favorite one because it was just, what got me is that no one said anything because no one knew. So that was one of my favorites. And coming from my job perspective, how important QA is to games is insanely important. Like he was saying, love for the person doing QA in the back. Because at my company, we have QA testing for our game every Wednesday and Friday, every week, all the time. We have people playing our game all the time. The other developers have to come and volunteer. You get volunteer as tribute to go play test. Because we have to constantly be fixing bugs in the game, especially with our newer game that I can't talk about. But it's insane how many times we have to play test. But that's why our games come out pretty nice. If you ever play Job Simulator, Vacation Simulator, that's why you don't see bugs. So we play testing all the time. So yeah, that's what I gotta say.
That is awesome. I appreciate it. I love that attitude. Playtest as often as possible. All right, next question. It kind of leads into it. So, what skills do you like in a tester, and how do you find those testers?
So I don't really use testers. Way back, I used to watch people play the game, and a diverse crowd or whatever. And somebody mentioned it earlier, but I'm going to repeat it. If you do watch people play your game, keep your mouth shut. If you open up your mouth at all, you've just lost any value. You're going to lose all future value. You can't say, oh, if you just click there, you'll get around that problem. It's pointless. You just go back and fix it and then bring it to another group. I'm my own QA. The buck stops with me. I used to have a beta that I went through that was a little too painful. So a group of players that would volunteer to be betas, I would give it to them, and then they would give me feedback. I am not allowed to capture information like other games, so the feedback has to be just written. They have to tell me the level or whatever. My games, I've been to Unity for about 5 years now, so the games are solid enough now that I actually just do early access prepaid beta. So they know a possible another version is coming, but anybody who wants the game early just pays the money, and then they can offer me feedback or they don't. And all I do is listen to that, and that's it. I don't have people play the game anymore. The main game hasn't changed that much. I wouldn't get value from it anymore. And I'm my own QA. And one last thing, and I automate a lot of the testing now. I have a one-button thing that will actually print out every level in my game, even though there's 2,800 levels. And then I can just review the screenshots, and I can look through the debug log to see if any level didn't complete, building, like ran into a null pointer or something, like that. So that's me. I'm done.
Yeah, I actually do testing a little bit differently. So we do multiple phases, and each with a different purpose. So we do one test, there's focus group testing, that we take the intended target audience and have them play to check for things like, do they enjoy the game, in terms of how the game is supposed to be played, are they doing it as intended. We also have QA companies come in who their sole purpose is not to play the game but to try and break the shit out of it, basically. And so they spend all their time kind of running into walls and jumping down things that they're not supposed to, so that we can kind of fix those issues and find any bugs. Then we do media testing. So what I do is I get a bunch of games journalists and pay them to do in-house, essentially, reviews where I can kind of take the temperature on how media and the public would perceive any particular game, and the mechanics and how the enjoyment of it. And then we do larger testing, such as a beta or an open alpha or something like that. So after that point, we collect all of the data, both from surveys, from feedback, and then obviously in-game data, and we compile it all, and that's consistently throughout the process. So hopefully by the end of it, we end up in a situation where we've got something that will actually sell well and be well received. But yeah, that's how we do it.
I'm going to tackle this from a little bit from a live service game, a PvP game. So first and foremost, influencers oftentimes are invited to do playtests, and they're said, hey, come check out the game, give feedback. As an influencer in the past, I would go in and be like, hey, this is really broken, or this is not, I've played thousands of hours of your games. And on the other side of the fence, as a game designer, I love my game. I want to play my game as much as possible, but we all know that we have lives and we're doing 10 different things at once. And so oftentimes the people who play the game the most, the influencers, the players out there, the esports players, they have very, very great feedback. But what often happens is that maybe those meetings are once a month, and they'll say, hey, Forrest, the sniper rifle's broken, the fireball is too strong, and or I would say that as an influencer, and then maybe a month later we'd get a patch, and it would be like, okay, the sniper rifle got nerfed a month later. When I went back on the other side of the fence as a game designer, I knew personally I felt very passionate, and I was like, hey, we got to change how this kind of works. So sat down with Hi-Res. I was like, Hi-Res, we're going to do something very, very dangerous and very sneaky and very, it could blow up in our faces. But Stu, for his credit, the CEO, is like, hey, Thor, show me what you got. So I found some people that I've worked with on the influencer side that I trusted vehemently. I said, hey, like, I know you have my back. You love Hi-Res. I love Hi-Res. And this is only going to work if we create this like mutual sense of respect. So brought these people in, and we slowly curated over time a group of 10 to 20 individuals that act as our QA. They have direct line of feedback to me, and I hate the word A/B testing, but really it's where they come in on a Monday. They say, hey, Thor, the sniper rifle's too strong, the fireball hits too hard, and I say, you know what, you're right. Patch. We're gonna have a build next Tuesday. Tomorrow, tell me how you feel. You like it in there. And so it's a direct line of communication where it's testing is like that. It's not having to wait, a month to have another build. It's just, hey, you guys have direct access to the build. Let me know what you think. And that's something that takes a lot of faith and a lot of like, hey, this could be dangerous, because the publishing team's like, no, don't do it. Do not do this. Because they get to see all of our dirty bits. They get to see the next skins coming out. They get to see the next content, right? And so that is something that for the game developers out there, you're gonna have to walk out there, take a little bit of a risk. But if you can find those special people, the people that have your back, you build those trusts with you, and then you can kind of curate that group, you can make something very special out of it. And so it's kind of dangerous, kind of new coming into the video game industry. And of course, with the overall atmosphere of the video game industry, it's kind of sinking. It's kind of like getting smaller and smaller. It's very hard in the tech industry. So finding those people is going to be a little bit harder, but that's something I'm very, very passionate about. Getting the people who are the most passionate about your game able to test it and able to give feedback on a Monday, get a new build on a Tuesday, and then say, hey, did we do good? Did we do bad? Like, do you got like the direction this is going? And so that's been pretty interesting, pretty wild. So
speaking as a difference between like a QA person versus just like an average person that's playing and providing feedback. The difference with a QA person, I would say I would expect them to like recall the context of how they triggered whatever bug or whatnot that's going on. Because if it's like, oh, hey, this thing crashed here because of this is what the error I got. Well, as a developer, I've got 10 more questions. Like, were you touching this thing over here? Like, because like if I've got an idea of what could be causing this, I want to know more about what was going on in order for me to recreate that and make sure that it doesn't happen again. So I would say like the difference between a QA person, just a random person that's demoing, is being aware of what you're doing as you're playing and how that is impacting the game space and how that could be given back to developers so they can fix things. Because be able to have a conversation, for one thing, being able to communicate. Communication is a huge component of that is not allowed for someone that's just like, hey, I enjoyed this, but I keep glitching out on this area. I want to have a conversation with whoever that QA person is to ensure that I understand the ins and outs. This never comes up again, and we can just nip this in the bud. And what if there's other use cases around that bug that could be called, and spreading things out. So like from a developer point of view, we're not just only fixing that bug in that situation, we're also considering the other ways that that impacts the rest of the game system, and if this could cause something else over here. So keeping in mind your awareness and being able to communicate what was going on at the time of that, taking notes about it, so on and so forth.
So my favorite kind of testers are actually two types. The people on my itch.io, because usually people on itch.io playing games are not like looking for the best amazing game in the world. They're looking for a small developer. They just want to play their game. And some of the best feedback I got was people from itch.io just finding my game. That being said, the reason people are sure found my game because I put it out there and I had a community. So going back to our keynote speaker, having community as a developer is very, very important. You'll find people who are passionate about your game and willing to give you feedback. So those are my favorite kind of testers. And also my favorite kind of testers are fellow developers. They also know what you're going through because they're also developing games. So a lot of times they get it, like Ken said, and also they can give you suggestions how to fix it. There's been so many times I have been on my little developer Discord and been like, yeah, this is broken, but like how do I fix it? And the developer's like, oh, this is how you fix it. You're using Unity, right? And they would help you. And it was amazing. So I tell all game developers to do this. Please interact with other developers and know other developers that can help you out. And another thing I'd say to developers as well, don't take the feedback personally. A lot of times you take it too personally, you be like, oh my gosh, I'm so offended. But yeah. But it's just a lot of to help the game better. Like as Joe said, there's haters and especially people who like your game. So avoid the haters and listen to the people that actually like your game because they're going to give you suggestions that can actually help you out, which is why I love itch so much. I love my itch community and I love my developer community. So yeah.
That is awesome. I guess that's the perfect time to do a little self promo. That's actually kind of what we do at Indie Cluster. We love giving feedback to developers since we're developers ourselves. But yeah, so it seems like we have a good amount of time for some questions. If you guys want to maybe pose a question to us individually or ask a question generally about PlayTesting or anything like that. Anybody want to raise their hand? What's up, man? So the question was, do we see or when do we see or do we often see when testers are? Oh, what? Okay, so what do we do when we see a tester? Gotcha. So where do we draw the line as far as fixing an issue when we see somebody kind of getting stuck when it comes to like an onboarding issue, or is it just something else in the game development?
Yeah. So, kind of being a little funny. So a lot of people say skill issue. I say design issue. So my tutorial, and I learned this the hard way through my several classes. That tutorial is designed for onboarding, but the rest of the game might not be. So am I designing the level in a way that still enforces what the tutorial said? If not, then they might get confused and lost. If I ever see a tester doing something they're not supposed to do or doing something the wrong way, I'm like, am I designing this incorrectly? Because it can functionally work. That's homies actually went to my master's class because I was like, I can make games function, but I can't make them fun or design well. So that's why I went to design classes. So always go back and look at your design, 'cause that's a huge issue and it's hard to fix sometimes in the bug. So design issues when you have that always is like, well, how is the level to be in design? So who else wants to answer?
Something else that I would say is important to consider is who your audience is, because like they may not play the type of game that you're making, or if you're doing something that's particularly niche. Taking that in consideration and weighing how much you want to cater to those people that may not be a part of that audience. As far as like certain game literacies and stuff along those lines, like sure, the tutorials and walkthroughs and stuff like that may help, but also realizing who you're making the game for. I've had situations where I've had to change my controls because a lot of my audience is potentially children. So like having buttons that are too far apart where their little hands can't reach is like an issue that I had to address that I didn't think of because I have people hands. I have adult hands. So I'm not thinking about that. So, being able to adjust things to cater to your audience, but also not making too much of the game about the particularities of non-focused audience members, I guess you can say. And if you need to explain more things, if you need to highlight more things, sometimes those can be fixed through art as opposed to mechanics and game designs. Maybe just like having something glow or having certain sound cues and things like that. That can help people to piece together the deductive reasoning in order to go where you want them to go. Like a lot of games having those coins that are just like drip through the rest of the level, that helps to lead them to go into the right order as opposed to just like you need 99 coins to buy this prize. So like design, art, those type of things can help to fix those issues where people aren't quite getting the game. And QA testers are going to do some wacky stuff. They kind of have to. It's part of their job. Like I'm not going to be able to fix why this thing keeps clipping over there. So like, weighing that importance as well and applicability of the average person that you're aiming to have play the game.
So I'll start with the negative. If you think popping up a text to tell them what they need to do, or that you need a tutorial, then you want to go back to the design and figure out how you can do it without that. I would put it this way. I would put a challenge to the developers of, with the exception of explaining your controls in a controller game, like up arrow, down arrow, and not explaining what they do, but maybe explaining which ones are active. That's about the only help I would want, in a game. Sorry, as a crutch. You should be able to figure out how to design a level or get your onboarding done without a formal tutorial. Again, popping up and telling them something is the wrong answer. I'll go further. I write stories in my stupid game that talk about the games. I specifically tell my players that I hate breaking somebody else's aha experience. And you can, even if one person doesn't get it, you can make the argument to your boss you don't care about that one person out of 100, okay? You can get by, but you have to be honest with yourself. Did he really miss something that everybody gets and he doesn't, because he doesn't play 3D, he doesn't do button mashes, whatever, you don't want to bend over backwards to please the one idiot to get him through your game that annoys your 99 people that are playing your game. That's what I was getting to. And I didn't start there, but that's what I was getting to. You don't want to annoy the group.
Yeah. Awesome.
But you can find a middle ground. It just takes work.
Yeah, I'm definitely one of those players that skips tutorials and then like My pride is no, I don't regret it. Like I mean, my pride is too much to say that I regret it out loud. Right, right. But as a a designer, I really love seeing design and UX examples where things are almost retold or retaught through each level that we're playing. Whether it's small little audio cues, visual cues, just the UI in general. Um, work. I mean, all of that is really just, or at least I respect a lot of all of that, rather than just putting it in the beginning in the tutorial. Yeah. Right. 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 That'll definitely help. Mm. All right. Any other questions? Maybe last question. Tips for becoming a playtester. I guess I can start with that. Just playing games, playing different types of games, having life experiences, and just looking at kind of what I alluded to earlier. Just looking at design. Period. I think the idea of uh, I think the idea of seeing a video game as a virtual space, its own universe, really, where when you first jump in, you're essentially being born and becoming a child and adult, all in that same right. So you got to learn the physics. You got to learn if you can jump, what you can run into. You kind of doing all that in a little microcosm, right? So if you look at it like that, then you can start seeing similarities to design to see what is communicated efficiently from the developer, whether it's colors, whether it's affordances. Like you can recognize a door, but you might not know how to interact with it, right? In a game, but even here in the real world, you can look at a door, and we've all had the example, or at least seen somebody pushing a door when they're supposed to be pulling it, right? So there's a lot of design choices, intentional choices that might not be communicated to the player, to the whoever is interacting with it. So just kind of thinking about a lot of that is usually what I like to think about or practice when testing games.
Only going to say one thing: somebody wants to become a play tester. The emphasis is on tester, not the play. You're not going to have, if you're doing the job right, you're not really having fun. If you're having fun too long, you're not really testing the game anymore. So you need to decide that before you really want to become a play tester, because it's a different skill set. You can enjoy play testing, but you're enjoying the testing, not the playing.
Yeah, get used to writing reports and doing the same thing over and over and over and over and over. So yeah, if you want to be like, it's fun, but it's repetitive and it's work, and 6 hours into doing the same level for the 900th time it's not so much fun no more.
So if I reached out to my CM and I was like, "Hey, you want to be this person's asking me to tester," I think the first thing I'm looking for is temperament and mentality. That is so important. If somebody comes at me and says, "You're an idiot," like, "Why did you do it this way?" And I'm like, "Okay, now it's out the window." Exactly. And so much of what I do with my testers is just having that dialogue. We get 20 of the different skill levels, but into the same room, and we're just in good spirit, yelling at each other. We're challenging each other back and forth, but we're doing it in a way where it's like, hey, think about it from this angle, think about it from this angle. Temperament is such a big thing when it comes to that. And then being able to speak eloquently about how you feel this. Like, this is something that potentially should be this way, this way. Having passion and just going for it. And that's something that I'll always reach out to my CMs and be like, tell me about this person. Do they feel like it? And if I have somebody come to my DMs and like, hey, here's this bug. This is how you replicate it. And it's concise. It's I can read 4 or 5 different lines. So there's not like a lot of like story or back end as far as this bug goes. I'm like, perfect. Let's grab them up. So also be trustworthy. Be trustworthy, because I'm letting you underneath the hood, be able to respect an NDA, and be like, please do not. You're out of here if you break an NDA. And I've had so many people break NDAs, and then just over time. But yeah, temperament and mentality, and those are my things that I look for.
I would say communication, awareness, and inverse problem solving. So be aware of what you're doing. Like I said before, know how you got to where you got, and what buttons you pressed, what you were doing at the time, how fast you were going. All those details are important to help pinpoint these things. With the inverse problem solving, essentially, like if something caused an issue, think about the other ways that this impacted it, all the stuff that was going into it, because this is information that you need to communicate to your team, to your developer, all that jazz, so that they can fix it. Your goal is to find things to be fixed, so we need to know as much information as possible to what's broken so that it can properly be fixed. As wonderful as it is to get caught up in the other parts of the game, it's just so important to make sure that we're creating a quality product. And creating a quality product involves like you thinking about all the ways that someone could potentially mess it up or have an issue. They get frustrated. Your goal is to help reduce the player having these type of problems so that we can catch them on the back end. So yeah, and communicate. Like, this is super important. I know being introverted is a huge part of our game, people. We're nerds and we stay inside, but you got to talk. You got to be able to tell what's going on and be able to have a back and forth with someone so that these things can be resolved.
Going to the people that want to have a job in QA, I would suggest that you have a game in almost every genre that you understand fully. So that way you can communicate to the game developer, because you don't know what job you're going to have in QA. Let's say you get offered as a QA tester for a puzzle game, but you don't play puzzle games at all. So how are you supposed to help like Joe if you don't know what puzzle games are like? So one thing I did as a developer, I think this can help as a tester. Before I became a developer, I had a favorite game in every genre, including sports, including mobile, including all that. 'Cause I didn't know what I was going to be. I know I was going to develop a multiplayer game. I don't know if I'm going to develop a single player game. I don't know what my job's going to ask for when I get that offer. So I need to know several different genres so I can be useful no matter what genre I get picked in. So that's my advice.
All right. Well, thank you to our panelists, and thank you everybody for showing out and helping up.